And nominate podcast that's gonna go down. And nominate podcast that's gonna go down. And nominate podcast that's gonna go down. Please be seated, because now it's time for What the Faith.
Welcome to episode 46 of What the Faith. This is our third attempt to start it because of all the technical difficulties, but here we are. We've got a full crew on deck for this Easter podcast. So Caroline, welcome back.
Thank you.
When was the last time you podcasted with us?
It's a fair while.
Yeah, I think it was our interview with Father Uncle Alex.
Oh, yes, that's
last
right.
year. Yeah,
that was
around
me.
October-ish, yeah?
Yeah.
And Gerry, how are you?
Hello.
How's your faithful, consistent podcasting partner?
You're not going to ask me when my last podcast was.
When was your last podcast, Gerry?
Episode 45.
Hey, that makes perfect sense. Happy Easter, guys.
Yes, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
family.
Let's try this. He is risen.
Hallelujah.
He is risen.
Oh, you guys got this
No.
wrong. You have to say, he is risen indeed.
Yeah. I hear it on EWTN all the time, and
Yeah.
I still forget it.
You guys just threw in some random Catholic words in there, didn't you?
It's okay.
Yeah, Gerry went with the Jewish greeting, and then you just, I don't know what you
I just repeated what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try it again. He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Well done, Caroline. Well done, Gerry. Coming up in our episode today, we're going to do some 10-minute theology, and we're just going to talk about some interesting moments from the Gospels during the Easter period. We're going to talk about Pope Francis and his Easter homily from the Easter Mass, and also maybe some of the things that we have done or tried to do with our children at Easter just to make Easter a little bit more special. Speaking of children...
Big congratulations to Lindsay
Yeah, the Sant
and
household.
Isabel.
Yeah, the Sant household was blessed with baby number 2, finally after 9 years. And I'll share a little bit of a story about why 9 years and how it all happened against their expectations. And that was a really good thing. And then lastly, Caroline is going to grace us with some science.
Yep.
So, well, I won't say anything else about that because I'll get it wrong. I'll leave it to you, the expert.
Not just that, I'll just be over and
Yeah.
be repeating myself. won't
Yeah,
I?
I mean, if Jerry and I do the science thing, we're just going to talk
just
about Star Trek.
Kuiper belts
Still
and
Kuiper
holding up your
belts.
It's been
pants.
science become science fiction.
Yes.
Yes.
Science
And
fake,
incorrect.
science fake news. So let's do some 10-minute theology.
Well, I'm actually feeling rather good about this. I think we've all arrived at a very special place, eh? Spiritually, ecumenically.
How do you make somebody love you without affecting free will?
Welcome to my world, son. You come up with an answer to that one, you let me know.
Yes, I had to work very hard to pass Latin and theology.
Oh, quite. Those are, of course, the most important things.
Oh, yeah.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
So guys, for today's 10-minute theology, and this is more snapshots, so I'm not going to go too deep into anything, but every year we hear the Gospels, well, a couple of different Gospel accounts of the Passion narrative. Actually, there's a lot of scripture at Easter, as we know, the Easter night, depending on which parish you go to, there's either going to be 3 readings or I think it's 8 or 10. There's
We do quite a few.
yeah,
Guys.
there's a lot of scripture, and it
Yeah.
can fly past areas pretty quickly. And in fact, there's a lot more scripture coming up. With tomorrow's Divine Mercy Sunday and the readings that come along. We're going to hear things coming up like the Road to Emmaus and all these other, and they're all just going to fly past their ears, and it's very easy to get lost in all the scripture and not know which scripture we should be focusing on as it flies by. So I just wanted to, I guess, talk about 3 interesting fun facts from some of the Gospels that have happened from Easter this year. And really, if anything, it's the message, I guess, is that Scripture is 3-dimensional, not 2-dimensional. It's not just the words on the page, but there's a lot of things going on behind the words as well, a lot of ways to interpret it. So are you guys ready for some Scripture mystery?
Oh, go for it.
There we go.
I thought you were going to call it four-dimensional.
4-dimensional.
That'll make it mysterious.
Yeah, is that like when you go to those movies where it's 4D and you get sprayed with water in the face and stuff like that?
I've never been to one of those.
Neither have I. I've just read about them.
They should make it.
And they have like
Oh, they
mist
do
and
have them,
blue.
do they?
They actually exist.
Oh.
Yeah. So The first thing I wanted to talk about was this year's Palm Sunday reading, Passion reading, was from Mark's Gospel. And Mark's Gospel is one of the shortest of the Gospels, and they say it's the Gospel used by Luke and Matthew especially to create their own. So they used the material from Mark's one, and they wrote their own Gospels, and then John took the best of all of them and wrote a much deeper Gospel as well. So a couple of things that happen in Mark's Gospel that are interesting. The first one is, and this is a theory that was from a German theologian from like the early 1900s, and since it came out, it's actually, a lot of theologians say it's not a very good theory and things like that. But there is one thing I think that's interesting, and it's called the Messianic secret. And so I'm not saying the Messianic secret is the be-all and the end-all of the Gospel of Mark, but there is this thread, like this line that runs all the way through the Gospel of Jesus doing miracles or doing something important and telling people, don't tell anyone what you saw. Or him sneaking away in time so that, nothing happens. So he's not revealed as God.
And that seems really unfair.
Yeah, it's really odd, isn't it? It's kind of strange. It's like, how did you get healed? I'm not allowed to tell. Awkward.
When all you want to do is tell everybody.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, imagine if it happened in today's age with Facebook.
I know.
Yeah, it'd be like a selfie. Look, no more leprosy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad one. Anyway, but the thing is, what's this thing? Because it's really confusing compared to, I think Matthew's Gospel has some of this as well, but it's really confusing. Why is Jesus depicted as saying, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone? One of the theories, and again, this is not the only interpretation, this is just an interpretation by a theologian, but one of the theories is that it sort of builds suspense to the big revelation in Mark's Gospel about who Jesus is. And now there are other moments where Jesus is revealed to the reader about who he is. So, his baptism and things like that. But there's this moment in Mark's Gospel where after all these times of saying, don't tell anyone, whatever, he's arrested and he's having this, he's on trial the night before his crucifixion. Australia, we call it the kangaroo court. Where basically they're doing anything they can to prove that he's guilty because they wanted to get rid of him. And there's this part where the high priests, I'm just going to read from Mark chapter 14 here, starting at verse 61, 62. And the high priest asks him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? Now, they've been asking him lots of questions. He's being hammered. They're putting the pressure on now. They're turning the screws on Jesus here, right? That's kind of how this is portrayed. Lots of different questions. There's been hours and hours of false testimony. He said he was going to destroy the temple. He's going to do this and this. So they're really, really putting the pressure on. And the Mark's Gospel, it's like, well, finally, okay, fine. Jesus just like, okay, I'm going to say it. Here it is. And so when he's asked this question, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? He says, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And it says here, the high priest tore his clothes and said, do we still need a witness? Well, it instead of clarifying, it becomes more, mayhem or whatever. Two things that stick out here. One is Jesus says, I am. And this is going to be part of my second point as well. But the phrase "I am" comes from that word Yahweh, the name of God that the Jewish people have. And it comes from the burning bush with Moses. And Moses says, when I go back to my people in Egypt, who should I tell them sent me? And God says, I am who I am, which is that great phrase. It means basically it's not a name. God doesn't necessarily have a name, but it's a description of who He is. And, it's like I am everything and I am eternal. That's basically how God describes Himself.
I love that.
Yeah, I am the one.
Yeah.
This is I'm it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so when Jesus uses this, of course, he spoke the name of God. He basically said the Yahweh, and so that drives them crazy. And then the whole blasphemy and the ripping of the clothes and all the screaming and wailing that you hear that goes on afterwards. So basically what Mark's Gospel does is it builds up to this climax where Jesus reveals, yep, this is me. And to the audience who reads it and follows along as well, this is like the final, hammering of the point, okay, this is the guy. This is, there's all these people who have said, I'm the Son of God, but this is the real deal. Just like in the time of Moses, there were all these people that said, this is, Baal is God, the God of the Canaanites are God. And you've got God saying to Moses, I am. I am who I am. This is it. There's nothing else. So that's the first one, because that line would fly over our heads as you're hearing it in mass, especially as you're trying to follow the parts that as the crowd that you're meant to, crucify him, and all that. Yeah. So that's the first one. Sticking with I am, on Good Friday we have John's Gospel. And in John's Gospel, there's another I am moment. So it portrays Jesus being arrested in the garden after while he's praying. What's interesting, first of all, is that it's deliberately called a garden because it's a throwback to the Garden of Eden. The Passion narrative is actually a new creation story. So you've got the first creation story with the fall of, the creation of everything and the fall of humankind and whatever else. Now you've got the second creation story as John writes it. And remember, John's gospel starts with in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word was God and was made flesh, whatever else. And we didn't understand him, etc., etc. And then we have this moment where that's confirmed, where now Jesus is in the garden and he does the right thing rather than the wrong thing. So the guards, the temple police and the servants and whatever else, following Judas, they come along to arrest him. And notice this, they arrive, and instead of them saying something first, he starts it off. He says, "For whom are you looking?" So John is really clear in this that Jesus is in control of the situation here. This is all happening on God's terms, not some random accident, that God didn't plan for. This is saying, this is on God's terms that all of this happens. And so they answer Jesus. They say, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth." And he replies, "I am he." All right, boom, there it is again. All right, there's the divine name. And it says here, and this struck me the first time I realized it, but it says here, they stepped back and they fell to the ground. It's the only gospel that records this happening. So what the heck is going on here? That these guys have like knives and clubs and, they outnumber Jesus and the apostles by I don't know how many. They're like the Simpsons with hired goons. You don't want to mess with these guys. So what's happening here? This is John saying the mentioning of the divine name shows who's in control, because they fall to the ground at the mentioning of the name. And notice it's Jesus who initiates what happens next. It says, again, he asked them, "For whom are you looking?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I told you that I am he. So if you're looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill what he's spoken. Blah, blah, blah. So what we have here is
blah,
Jesus.
blah, the
blah, blah,
Bible.
blah. I'm not blah, blahing the Bible. I'm just, you get the point.
Yes.
But the point is that he's in control of the situation here. This isn't some, accidental historical happening. What John is trying to say is that this new order of creation that he's setting up through Jesus, this is the good one. This is the one that's going to set us on the path. How does it end? It ends with his resurrection. So this is the path to the resurrection. So instead of finishing with the fall of man, it finishes with the raising up of man. So that takes me to my last one, really quickly. Are you guys getting knocked out by all my fun facts?
Yeah, it's actually really good.
So here's the last one. And this is another one that always caught my attention as well. In Mark's gospel, again, the arrest of Jesus, same thing. When he was arrested, everyone deserted him and fled, according to Mark's gospel in chapter 14 from verse 50. 51 and 52 is really bizarre. Like, I always wondered, what place does this have in Mark's gospel? Why did he bother to mention this? Because it says here, a certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. And that's it. What? Could you imagine listening to that and scratching your head? And the other thing is, like, if you're not paying attention, that just flies past, doesn't it? Well, this young man comes up again at the end of Mark's gospel in chapter 16. When they go to the tomb, the women go to the tomb to look for Jesus' body. It says this: as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look at the place where they laid him." And then I'll just leave it at that point. But the thing is this: this is meant to be the same young man. The first one runs away in shame because he abandons Jesus, at a moment where, we're probably, it's the guilt of abandoning Jesus, right? And this is something for all of us. When have we felt the guilt and shame of abandoning Jesus? So what happens? Is this young man destroyed, punished, annihilated, whatever else? No, he's there now wearing white, as in he's been redeemed. So, and he is announcing the good news. So it's the lifting up of, of all the guilt of humankind and whatever else. It's been redeemed, it's been, saved and restored, and it has the opportunity to do like the evangelizing work of Jesus and so on. So these are just some, now, with just these three examples, there are hours and hours of things that people much smarter than me could say about them. But these three things I feel are ones that fly over our heads. Certainly fly over my head every year, whenever we hear the different gospel accounts. But there you go.
Yeah.
10-minute theology.
No, good insight, Lindsay.
Bang.
Thank you.
No worries. So, we're moving on now. And what are we moving on to, you guys? Oh, Pope Francis. Yeah. So, now this is exciting because we've got a new jingle. Are you guys ready for this?
Ready.
Bring it.
All right.
The Golden Rule also reminds us of our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of its development. No one who sleeps can sing, dance, or rejoice. It's no good when I see people who sleep. No, wake up. Go ahead.
So there it is, our new jingle for Pope Francis, and this segment for now we're just going to call From the Mouth of Francis until we can think of a better name.
Nice one.
Thanks. There you go. So we're going to focus today on Pope Francis's homily from the Easter Mass. He said a lot of things throughout Lent and whatever else, but we haven't got time to go through every single thing he said. So basically, Caroline, Gerry, and I are just going to pick on one of the three things that he said in his homily, and just some of our own reflections on that. So I got an easy one. So what he says is, we've just listened to the word of God from the gospel, and I want to say three things. The first thing he wanted to say is talk about is the announcement. The Lord is risen. That proclamation that from the first Christians they would greet each other this way: the Lord is risen. And the women were there to anoint his body, and they found a surprise. All right, and so we'll talk about the surprise in a minute. But the first thing is, it seems anti reason today to say that he's risen from the dead. There are a lot of people find it really hard to take seriously the idea that this person a couple of thousand years ago rose from the dead, and that's why it's such a joyous greeting for us, I guess, because it is so anti our expectations. And all the stories, the ancient stories you read and so on, how many of them have the idea of a person who was innocent, who was then murdered in such a humiliating way, and then rises from the dead? In fact, last year's Easter podcast, we read, I don't know if you guys remember, we did Mark Shea's article about, all the things against the resurrection. So we won't rehash all of those. But I think this year, the key thing that Pope Francis is saying, like with boldness, we can say he is risen. And it's a thing of victory that says that death is not the end of our story. It doesn't finish us off. Whatever death does, it's not the end. We feel that death is the end because we can't see the other side of it. But the promise of the resurrection is, sorry, death, you're part of the story, but you're actually not the final part. There's the joy of heaven that comes after death as well. So that's why we say he is risen, because it's not just stating something that happened, but it's also a joyous greeting for all of us. And that's why we all, respond like at the start of the podcast. You all got it right eventually.
Well, probably a bit better than that,
yeah,
but yeah.
But he is risen indeed. It's a confident proclamation that he is risen, not just he might have risen. It's possible he rose. So it's like, no, he is risen. And not just because we're foolishly deluded into believing that, but firstly because it was his words. If we believe that he was the Christ, he was divine, he spoke about it. He said, yes, this is going to happen. And then he proves it happens because there's no body to find in the tomb, in the day after. And then there's the resurrection appearances. And there's also the witness of everyone who follows afterwards. I don't want to steal from you too much, Gerry, but then there's the witness of everyone who later on says, yes, we were there, he appeared to us, and he's risen indeed. And that testimony, if it was nonsense, I don't see how this band of 12 Jewish people could have lasted as long as it did. Their message. Mm-hmm. If it was nonsense, why is it still alive and well today?
And they died for the message too.
And
they willingly gave up their lives.
You don't die for a lie, do
no.
you? You go, okay, I was just kidding.
And many thousands of people since have done the same.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm just a fisherman. I was just joking. It's all right. Yeah. All right, Gerry. Right. Secondly.
Yeah, so the second part of his homily, and this comprises of most of his homily.
You get the big hard work today.
is the surprise. So I imagine a lot of us have heard of the colloquial saying, our God is a God of surprises. And he's just played his biggest trick of all. So funnily enough, Easter Sunday also fell on the widely used April Fool's Day.
Yes.
And this is probably the biggest surprise that God has cooked up. He turns everything that humans have known about death and just turned it inside out. And so that's, it's sort of all, the Bible is, and all the stories within there, the whole past, creation, Abraham, everything has led up to that moment. Many times during the Easter Masses, we heard in order to fulfill the Scriptures. Anyway, back to surprises. Abraham probably copped a good one.
Yep.
Kill your son. Well, that would be a surprise in the first place, and then to get, essentially, God said, "No, by the way, don't do that. You got to ram in the bushes. Do that one instead."
Yeah, it's the surprise is another word that I think you could swap with the drama of it as well. So it's interesting you should bring up the Abraham story because the Abraham story and the resurrection story have two very similar things, and that is that God waits till the last minute. The author writes on God's behalf that it's not, for example, with Abraham and Isaac, there isn't some point halfway through the story or 3/4 or even 1 minute into the story where God says, no, child sacrifice is wrong, don't do that. It's not until the very last second he's like, wait, don't do it. Because can you imagine someone reading it? It's the drama of it. It's the God intervening at the last minute saying, no, not enough. Child sacrifice won't work. And the same, what you're saying here, the surprise of the resurrection, it's very last minute because he's already dead. There's no one's coming to save him at the last second from the cross, or as he's being walked up to be crucified, no one comes in and goes, stop, don't do it. It's like he's already died, he's lost, and then suddenly he's risen from the dead. That there's lots of similarities in that drama with Abraham and the resurrection there.
And now the second point he brings up within surprise is not just the surprise, but the reaction to it. Now he spends more time on the resurrection side, so he speaks of Andrew running off to Peter. He speaks of the women who came to dress the body, and seeing the young man. Surprise, he's not here. And what do they go and do? Do they go and sit outside the tomb and talk about it with each other? Or no, they rush off. They run. And that's, I think, the message that Pope Francis puts is with the surprise comes haste. Yeah. The last thing that Pope Francis was saying, get up. He's not. Pope Francis is not a fan of the sit around and listen Catholic. He's a fan of the get up and go. And this is probably the biggest reason to get up and go, is what happened on Easter Sunday, the resurrection.
That's awesome, Gerry. Any other reflections there, or are we going to...
Moving on to Caroline.
Go for it, Caroline. Number 3.
That focuses a bit more on us.
That's great, Gerry.
Well, the last part of the homily is that Pope Francis then turns to us and he challenges us. Are we ready for a surprise? Are our hearts open to any surprises that God has for us? Are we ready to run towards and make haste towards God and what he has for us? Or are we just going to sit back and go, I'll do it tomorrow? Yeah. A lot of us, it's very easy to do. I'll pray rosary tomorrow. I'll just go to mass another day or whatever. Are we ready? Are our hearts open? Are we like Peter and John, after hearing that Jesus is not in the tomb, running towards it to find out, to go and have a look? I mean, they didn't go, I'll just go next week and see.
I'll check out the tomb later.
Later.
Check my nets.
No, they ran. They wanted to find out what was going on. And that's the kind of enthusiasm that we need to have with our faith. And that's how we grow in our faith. And that's how God can work
Peter
in our lives.
He wasn't on Netflix, which in those days was when he cast his net over the side of the boat. Thanks. Thanks. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I beat you, Gerry. Yeah.
So, that is what Pope Francis wanted out of the whole sermon. He concludes with, let's be ready for any surprises that God has for us. And I know definitely in my life, and I'm sure reflecting on our own lives, we can see all the surprises. When you think things are going wrong, you've hit rock bottom. You cannot see any way out of what's going on, your house, your family, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the next day you wake up and God's come through for you for some reason, and you look back and you go, oh, that was for a reason. Oh, that's why that happened.
Surprise.
Yeah. And that's how he teaches us. You just rely on me, have faith in me, trust in me, and I will surprise you and come through for you.
It's the drama again, isn't it? I love it.
It is the drama.
Yeah.
You're so right. It really is the drama. He's not a boring God.
I'll fix everything for
he
you
wants
right now,
us
don't
to
worry.
know that he's there.
Yeah.
And that is the best way, because humans are a bit dumb-witted and dull-minded sometimes, and
we give up too easily.
We need that shock in our lives
Yeah.
to, God tries, poor thing, because we're so dim-witted sometimes. We just need that jolt to be reminded that he's there for us.
Yeah. All right. So as we continue, actually, it's funny because we're going to talk about children now. The children are coming through the door.
The children are coming back from the park.
So just forgive us if there's some children noises for the next couple of minutes. But Caroline, moving on to that then. So we were talking about before this podcast about children and what we were trying to do for our children this year to make Easter relevant. And you had a couple of ideas for what you did with your kids. So I don't want to throw it over to you now.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us what you've done.
Well, I like to pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy during the week after Easter, and then to try and receive the graces, as the promises from Jesus, that he gave to Saint Faustina. And anyway, I love the Chaplet of Divine Mercy anyway, and as part of
that's one of yours.
Yes, hello, Harry. Harry can talk, everyone. I don't think anyone's good boy. Anyway, so this year, because Frankie, my eldest, has turned 6, and he's beginning to understand, and they're learning about our faith in school and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I decided to involve him in the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and so we prayed it a few times together, and I really, he actually really enjoyed it. He prayed the prayers along with me. I'd say the first half, he'd say the second half, and he really got involved, and we got to have a bit of a discussion about what the prayer was and why we say it and all the rest of it.
Yep.
I'm just opening a packet of cookies for Harry.
So some cookies for me as well.
Okay, yeah.
Are they Easter cookies?
No, just McDonald's cookies.
Okay.
Sorry, but yeah.
Let down.
So yeah, I actually really enjoyed involving Frankie, and we say prayers every night, and for him saying a whole chaplet on the rosary beads, the first remark I got while we were praying was, "Gee, Mummy, this is a bit long, isn't it?" Because it's longer than just the few prayers that we say before bed. But he persevered, and he said it all, and he actually really enjoyed it. So that actually helped me a lot too to get involved. So yeah.
It helps with the Divine Mercy prayer as well. I don't know if you've heard Father Rob Gallia's. He recorded it, so he sung it with Gary Pinto and Natasha Pinto, I think it was. And leaving that playing in the background, because it's kids and repetitive music.
Yeah.
And so even like Damien, when I used to leave it playing, like he would sort of just start joining in.
Yes.
Or when it was switched off, he would just start singing it to himself.
Kids love a repetitive, whatever a song, a poem, whatever. They love repetition.
Yeah,
so,
and the words of the Divine Mercy prayer are beautiful to remember. They're a good teaching, little phrase. Yeah.
So after this, we do pray a few Hail Marys, but I would like to start trying to get him into the rosary now. But that's a good idea. I might leave the rosary playing in the background, and then we'll start getting into the rosary.
If it's to music or something.
So
wait, hang on, Caroline. Are you saying, shock horror, are you actually involved in your kids' spiritual life?
Of course I am.
Oh, wow. I should try that.
A devoted Catholic mother. Yes.
Very good.
Yeah, it's one of the joys to be able to share your faith with your children, and then seeing them asking questions and teaching them. And this morning I went to confession.
Yeah.
And Mum had to come too, because I cannot go to confession with my boys,
No.
and they're not going to come in the room with me. But
Mum, why did you say that?
Yeah, what does that mean, Mummy? But, yeah. But, you know, just being an example to them, and then I got to speak to Frankie about what confession was, and then you know, telling him that in a couple of years he'll probably be making his first, you know, confession, and just introducing him to that slowly. So
the sacraments are good teaching moments too. Yeah.
So
It's like we went to a baptism today, and you know Damien was with us, so there were all these different symbols the priest was talking about. So we asked Damien, what did you pick up afterwards? They're good teaching moments. Yeah.
So
Jerry, what about you?
Yep. Well, we got James and Caitlin. James managed to be sick most of it.
Sure.
So we alternated who was there and who wasn't there. And then Caitlin, just starting prep, just starting to read. A lot of what we're trying to do with her is trying to get her away from not just keeping her quiet during the Mass, but starting to get her involved.
Yeah.
She has made the comment, Mass is boring. So I said to her,
kids don't think that, do they?
why don't you want? Do you want to join in? Do you want to try and do it with us? And she sort of nodded her head and said yes. So, she can't read yet. Although she will, in the middle of say the gospel when it's on the screen, she'll tug me, pull me down from my standing position, and say, "Dad, look, the."
Isn't that good? Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
Or one,
and.
And so she's I can see she is paying attention, and she likes the she's got a good affinity with Father Michael, our parish priest. And it's really just trying to get her, to do the things that we're doing as opposed to just sitting or being involved in her own things. The bit with the baptised in water, when Father Michael goes around. In other places, other parishes, there sort of is a small metal device to fling the water, and not much comes out.
Yeah.
Father Michael will dip a tree branch in there.
Got a branch there. Yep.
And
on a good soak.
Yeah, and especially the ones he likes. So he stopped near ours and gave Caitlin a couple of flicks.
Yes.
Afterwards,
Frankie,
he got me in the eye.
Yeah.
Frankie actually got very upset
cracked
with
it.
Father. He's like, "Why you wet me? I don't want to be wet."
Down my shirt.
He cried for half an hour.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Father saw us with baby Alexander, and so because we hadn't been to Mass in a while because Isabel was still recovering, so he gave Isabel and Alexander a big flick, and Damien as well. Yeah.
But it's at the moment, because she can't read yet, and there's not a whole lot in the way of pictures, and it's a bit harder for her to join. I'm just trying to get her into doing the same things we do, telling her, especially after communion, when you go back to your seat and kneel, like I asked her to kneel down and just trying to teach her to use that time to pray a bit. She's like, how? What do you say at school? And things like that. So she's still definitely at a learning stage, but just trying to getting her more involved in the what goes on, and so she's not trying to make it less boring.
Do you know how I got Damien to kneel at Mass? You ready for this? I told him a joke. It's like, during Mass, I do this. You can pretend to be Damien. So I went, Damien, knock knock.
Who's there?
Kneel.
Kneel who?
Kneel down. and he found it funny the first time, and now he hates it. Very bad.
He's
Very
sitting
bad.
there nodding and smiling next to you.
He hates that joke now. He'll look at me really bad. If I just go knock knock in church, he'll be like,
you kneel down to preempt it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't be
Don't say the rest
embarrassing,
of it.
Dad.
Yeah,
You're such a dad.
I'm terrible. Yeah. You know what else, Gerry, I find is praying the prayers of the Mass with your kids. So, like, Our Father, for example. When they pray it at home, they then realize it in the Mass and go, "Oh, look, it's Our Father." So, especially for kids like Caitlin's age, that's really nice.
Yeah, she recognised it as something she prays at school.
Yeah, that's right. It's beautiful. Or if we sing it at church like they do sometimes, like sing it when no one else can hear us, but like sing it together, because then they get used to that. It's quite nice.
Yeah, Frankie enjoys singing during Mass, and he asks me, "Is there another song? Is there another song, Mummy?"
Sometimes I'll be singing, and sometimes I'll sing at James, and he'll tell me to stop.
No singing. Too big.
Or I catch Frankie at home going, "Lord have mercy," and he's just singing "Lord have mercy."
Yeah, but just pick these things up slowly.
Driving his cars on the ground, singing "Lord have mercy."
Because like family singing cars on long roads, long trips, isn't it? Yeah. With me, so there wasn't any special trick, technique this year because Damien's getting older and more, a bit more mature as a 9-year-old and a bit more aware of things. So I think what we did was there are two things I focused on. One was symbolism. So any kind of Easter symbols that came up, I talked about that. We've been talking about symbols a lot. So I actually started with Star Wars first when we were talking about symbols. So Damien knows very well like the symbol of Luke Skywalker, at the very beginning of his journey, there's the twin sons, before he leaves, the day before he leaves and goes on his big epic journey, which goes, for right up until the Last Jedi. There's the twin sons, which he sees, which is like, looking out to the horizon, the future, his hopes and his, his destiny and things like that. And then everything after that in the next couple of Star Wars films is all about, his destiny and him meeting his destiny, which is ultimately, fighting Darth Vader or whatever else. Then when he... Sorry for the spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Last Jedi yet. But then
you should have seen it by now.
Yeah, should have been. Yeah, no excuses.
It's out on Blu-ray.
That's right. Yeah,
In Australia.
and yes, it's out on digital iTunes as well. I already got it and watched it a few times. But then when he dies at the end, he dies, and there's two suns setting. Like it's the end of his journey, so that you can see how it caps off his journey.
We had two sons. Anyway.
Yeah, it was going to be kind of hot.
Yeah.
Tatooine's not a nice place to go.
No.
Yeah, but like it's but there's that symbolism. And we've also been watching Lord of the Rings, and talked about the Catholic, the Return of the King. It's an obvious symbol. The idea of Bilbo and Frodo, both of the stories are two people on pilgrimage. So it's not the physical travel, but it's the personal things that happen in that travel. Is all that kind of stuff, and all of that relates to all the stories of Easter time and the stories of faith throughout the year. So I kind of relate the stories of faith back to all that nerdy stuff and all these things that also have that same kind of symbolism. Anything else you want to say about this, or should we move on to...
I think we're looking forward to the next line.
Are we? What's the next line?
Well, we talked about children.
Children. Oh, right.
We've left one out.
We've left one out.
Left him out.
The newest addition to the clan.
Yeah. So what are you doing to teach Alex?
Wait, tell us when Alex was born.
Yes, tell us. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Lindsay and Isabel. Second son is born.
Yeah, so we were very, very thrilled with the birth of Alexander. We called him Alexander Francis. So Alexander.
Why did you call him Alexander Francis?
So Alexander, after Father Uncle Alex, who's a missionary priest in Peru, happens to be Caroline and I's uncle as well.
Visited us once or twice.
Who's visited us a couple of times, yeah, and we've had two podcasts with him. Actually, our last two podcasts are all about him. So he's been inspiration for our life since we were children. So Alexander is a perfect name, and then Francis, our current reigning Pope Francis.
No, you just copied Frankie.
And Frank, yeah, because we're so jealous that you got it first, yeah. So we decided.
Hopefully, if you guys have a third child, it's not going to be for the. Hopefully, we're not going to have a new pope by then.
We'll see. Well, let's just see how that.
Yeah.
No pressure, guys. Let's see. Yeah, you'll be Francesca. The girl. Yeah. So he was born on February 19th. He came 3 weeks early. So due to a complication, which was not, I don't want to make it sound too not life-threatening or whatever else, but there was a condition that meant he had to come 3 weeks early by cesarean. So poor Isabel had to go through that whole process. But speaking of, say, the god of surprises that we were talking about before, he was a complete surprise. Not because he was unexpected or unwanted or anything like that, but Damien's 9 years old, and we've had no kids since Damien. So, question mark, what's going on there? So I wanted to just quickly and really briefly just say something about how I think this has been an answer to our prayers in a way that was unexpected to us. So after Damien was born, Isabel and I were clearly keen to grow the Sant family and have baby number 2.
Yeah, I wanted another nephew or niece. So.
And everyone was saying to us, when's the next one? And nothing happened. We wanted children and no children came along. And so, obviously after a year or two, we're starting to think, okay, something's not right, clearly, because, everything worked the first time and nothing's working this, now. And so we started this process of trying to work out, all right, well, who do we see about this? So we started off with the GP, just GP visit. We can't have children. What's going on? And he said, probably the best thing to do is see a specialist. The GP can do blood tests and whatever, but what's he going to find? So he sent us to a specialist, in fertility and whatever else. And the specialist was really nice, but we were really unsatisfied with how that all went. Because he kind of talked about charting and mapping things out for Isabel and whatever. But then he kind of said, and if the charting doesn't work, we'll just go to IVF. And we're like,
yeah, that's very common now.
But the thing is, for us, we were like...
It's kind of like, if I can't fix this crack in the wall, I'll knock the place down.
Yeah, I'll just knock the house down and build a new house. Yeah, that's what it kind of felt like. Because no, we don't want to know. We don't want to just
it's a horrible
override
thing.
Everything. It's we want to know what's actually going on. Because there could be underlying causes too. Which in the end there were, which was really good that we discovered them, because Isabel could have been really sick later on in her life. So so we saw this guy. I think we saw him once or twice, and and then he was kind of, and he wasn't being, mean or nasty or whatever, but we were kind of
Just wasn't what you're after.
and it wasn't compatible with, how we, from the Catholic point of view, like the whole natural way of doing things and whatever. So, so we left it. Didn't know what to do. I was listening to a Catholic Answers podcast.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was I think it's Dr. George Delgado, and he is a fertility person, expert in all this kind of stuff, and he's and he was talking about natural family planning, which I'd forgotten all about, really, and he started talking about that, and he started talking about NAPRO technology, and the whole idea is, NAPRO stands for natural reproduction, basically. So working out what's wrong with, with your body that means you can't have children. Now, this was the first answer to our prayers, because we were praying about this. In fact, there'd be nights where Isabel was asleep, and I'd just stick my hand on her and I'd be praying, saying, what's going on? Please help us. We don't know what's happening here. And there was a bit of pain in this journey because again, people would innocently ask, when are you having children next? Damien would come up to us and he'd say, when am I going to have a brother or sister? That's
yeah, that cuts.
How do you respond to a question like that? I always said, well, if one comes along, we'll be very be great. I said, but you know what our greatest blessing is? It's you. We'd always say things like that to him, but it's hard. There's no other way to explain it away to a child that you might not be having another sibling. So this was the first little answer to our prayers when he's talking about finding the underlying cause, because this is exactly the language that we were using. We wanted to know what was going on. So I looked up NAPRO technology in Australia, and I was kind of looking, and it wasn't really, wasn't really finding anything very much. And so then I sent the podcast to a couple of other friends of ours who were kind of in the same boat as us, and they were really keen. And they actually did a lot more research and homework than we did, and they found someone who's actually only about 20 minutes from where we live here, who was actually doing NAPRO technology, helping women with that kind of stuff. So we all went together, the four of us, and there was another couple who, by coincidence, that we happened to know that was there as well. So there were six of us listening to this lady who was talking about what NAPRO technology is about and whatever, and how basically from then on all we'd need to do is have appointments with her and do the whole charting, there's this whole charting the cycle thing, and I'm a guy, so I can't explain it to you properly, but looking for, but what she was saying was that women can chart their cycles and find irregularities, with certain procedures and methods, which I won't go into here. So we started on that, and we were bringing charts in. We had about maybe 3, maybe 4 follow-ups, with her. And so where it led to was she was having a look, and she kind of identified that, there's something not regular, going on with Isabel. So so she then had a Catholic doctor in mind, and she said, maybe I think we need to go to the next stage. You need to have an appointment with her. So we did that. We had I think 2 to 3 appointments with her. And she basically said, she said, look, I'll do a blood test on Isabel first of all, and we'll just see if there's anything going there. Now, she said, there are a number of reasons why women could have trouble with fertility or whatever else. And she said this. She said, one of them could be celiac disease. And she said to Isabel, do you feel sick when you eat wheat or whatever else? And we're like, Isabel says, sometimes I eat certain foods and I feel warm in, in my chest or whatever, maybe, I don't know, whatever else. Anyway, she did the blood test, and we came back, but celiac disease. Yeah, wow. So now the blood test is not the definitive thing, but there were signs from the blood test that it could be celiac disease. So she went and did
gastroscopy
or endoscopy, whatever, one of them. Yep. And yes, there it is. There were definite signs that there was damage in her, intestines from celiac disease. What celiac disease does is it's a reaction to gluten, which is found in wheat, and it kind of kills off they're called villi. They're little thingies in your intestines that absorb nutrients and things. And this is why people with celiac disease can feel very tired or get very sick. The reactions can be different depending on how long you've had it for and how long it's been there and whatever. So when it was confirmed, basically Isabel had to go on a gluten-free diet. So not the fad diet that some people have. This was like an actual legitimate. She needed to go gluten-free. And what they said was that over time, as she was not eating gluten, very slowly her intestines would start to repair themselves and things like this. And that's kind of what happened over the years. So we're talking about a 9-year or 8-year process here. it started to happen. So further endoscopy showed that her villi were returning. She was doing really well and things like that. So at this point, 8 years later, or 7-8 years later, no babies. And so we'd kind of given into the fact that maybe that was it. Our babies in the house days were over, and that was it. And we came to terms with it, although I don't think we were ever completely satisfied with it. There's always that nagging what if. What if we did have another one? What would it be like? And meanwhile, people around us are having babies, and we're like, really happy for them. And then we look at ourselves and go, thank God we have one, at least. That's the positive part of it. So, anyway, one night, Isabel noticed that things were sort of going back to normal, and a little bit down the track, things were not normal again. And so, just on a hunch, she did a pregnancy test, and she pulled out an old one that she had that was, I think it was past its use by date as well. Whoops.
Yeah, they still work.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing. She pulled one out. She goes, Lindsay, look at this. And I looked at it. It's like positive. Was it 2 lines is good? Yeah. It was 2 lines. 2 lines positive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how accurate is this? Because I'm like, I want to be excited, but
I remember those days.
And I was saying, it's like I want to be excited, but I don't want to like. Get excited and ends up being, they talk about false positives. Even on the box it says 99.9% accurate.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was a bad person. I kind of bought some new ones and made her do about 3 or 4 of them.
It's okay. I did about 10 for each one.
But they all came up positive. And so we went to the doctor. The doctor said, all right, congratulations, you're having a baby. And we still we both wanted to believe it, but we were pinching ourselves how true is this? How true is this? And it wasn't until 6 weeks into the so-called pregnancy that we did an ultrasound, and during the ultrasound, the technician, she was scanning, and she said, there's a fetal sac here, they call it, and I said, is that confirmation of pregnancy? She said, no, it's not confirmation yet, we need to zoom in a bit more. And she zoomed in a bit more, and you can't hear it, but you can see on the machine the heartbeat, and there it was. You know what I mean? That was now then I got excited. Finally, then I had permission to be excited. And so, and I remember, were you there? No, Mum was there, and so was Paul, and maybe Marilyn. You weren't there at the doctor. They just happened to be there at the doctor on the day, just by coincidence.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. So I leaned into Mum and said, "Mum, just keep your voice down. Don't get too excited." I said, "But we're pregnant." She's like, "Yeah." So anyway, so 9 months down the track, after a cesarean procedure at 37 weeks, Alexander was born, and thank God.
Yay.
It's really nice to have.
And he's the cutest little
he's a beautiful
bubba.
little boy, and I don't care how much sleep we're not getting, and I don't care how many dirty nappies we have to change and all the hardships that come with it, because it's just nice to finally have this little man in the house and have the sounds of a baby in the house again. So if these two end up being all we end up having, awesome. We had a second one, but really, I mean, how is it an answer to our prayers? I wanted to get to this as well. It's not the click of the fingers that God goes, you can't have babies, now you can have babies. I think this for us is more that the God of surprises that we were talking about before. It's just you question what the heck is going on, and then God answers in a way that you sort of don't expect. And this was the answer to our prayers, is that I guess we stayed faithful to God despite the difficulties that we had. And that staying faithful to God gave us our answer. Now, if we didn't have Alexander, the answer would have been something else, I guess. But the answer for us, I guess, was just to hang in there and stay faithful, and then whatever is going to happen will happen. And in this case, we were blessed with a beautiful boy. So there it is. Yeah. And I didn't sleep very well last night because he had his immunization yesterday.
Oh, poor baby.
Yeah. But it turns out he likes the rainbow song from Kermit the Frog. So that was a discovery out of it. Yeah. So why don't we move on? Enough about me. We'll pass the torch over to Caroline now.
It's all about me now.
It's all about you. And why don't we move into a segment talking about science?
What a fine day for science.
You have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Can you reverse the polarity?
I'll do my best.
Science, 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 science. Science, 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 science. Yeah, I like science.
So Caroline, Gerry and I are going to listen really carefully for any mistakes that you make today. So this science segment is yours, and I'm just warning you, we're going to assess everything you say very carefully.
That's it. I'm out of here.
Aren't we, Gerry?
Yeah, because you know.
Can't wait for the slip-ups. Go, take us away, Caroline.
Well, it's been quite an exciting week or so for science. I mean, specifically space science, which is probably one of my most favourite sciences. But so let's start at Easter night, where we had a full moon, which is amazing. Always great to view. I just got a telescope back in December, and I've been looking at the moon and photographing the moon. So
it's been some good shows from the moon since Good Friday. I think over 2 or 3 nights there was some
so
really
we
good...
had pretty much full moon for 3 nights. I mean, they're not technically was 99.8% gibbous, blah blah, waxing, waning, but
what? We're not talking about waxing. We're talking about the moon.
So there was, it was becoming full moon from about Good Friday. So I got some, and thank goodness it was clear night. So I managed to photograph the moon for the 3 nights and annoy everyone on all my social media with my photos.
We got lots of moon photos from you.
Yeah, but how could you not? It's so amazing to look at.
In fact, we'll put one on the podcast cover for this.
Let's annoy our listeners as well.
With a moon photo.
I'll show you. We'll do the Easter night. It was such a nice,
beautiful,
full, actual full moon. Yeah. And they called it a blue moon because it was a full moon at the beginning of the month and a full moon at the end of the month.
Not because it was sad.
No. Okay. Our moon is never sad. Don't you not see that smile?
True.
It's cheese.
It's
I mean, no, it's not cheese.
Jared had something lined up for that from Wallace and Gromit.
I thought I'd get in there before you guys.
He was going to pull that trigger. Yeah.
So that was very cool. Also, Easter night, the space station, the Chinese space station, the Tiangong-1, actually crashed to Earth.
You didn't just make that up, did you, that name?
No, that's what it's called.
Okay.
And what was it called? The heavenly... Sorry, let me just... I forgot what they called it.
There was an English name as well.
Something... Yeah, that's horrible. I should know it. Anyway.
Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
So, Babylon 5?
No, not Babylon 5.
None of those?
No.
The Space Bar.
You distract me
that's an oldie, that one. Yeah.
Anyway, so it has been slowly coming towards Earth for the last few years. They lost control of it. Although they didn't like to admit that they lost control, but they did lose control.
Were there people like...
Not in this... No. So what they'd done is they'd have 2-week missions. So they'd fly their astronauts up there. They'd do 2 weeks of study and then they'd go down. And it's in preparation because they want to launch another space station in the next few years. And so this was basically a study on the space station and how to maintain it and how it works and all the rest of it. Just...
It's a test for the...
testing, basically, for an actual space station. It's similar to the International Space Station that is up there now. But unfortunately, it was only supposed to last for about 3 years, but they kept it going for a little while, and then they lost... Oh, my husband is whispering into my ear. It's called the Heavenly Palace.
Heavenly Palace.
If you are to translate it to English. So,
see, it's good to have a fact checker on board.
I
isn't
know
it?
he's very good at these kind of things. But
There's quality control people.
Very good at correcting me. Yes. So it lost control, and usually space stations or spacecraft are controlled, steered down to Earth in a controlled manner. But anyway, it managed to land somewhere where there were no people. It was near American Samoa, apparently in the Pacific. Luckily, no one was in the way.
Yep.
And, so it crashed and burned on Easter night. So after everybody waiting for it for a while and just wondering when is it going to land, where is it going to land, everyone thought that it was going to land on their head. But
there was news stories going a bit crazy saying, maybe somewhere in Australia.
Yeah, everyone wanted it to land. All the news, I'm sure the news outlets all wanted it to land someone.
If it landed in Tasmania, I mean, no big loss, really.
Oh, look, I didn't say that. But
love you, our little not on the mainland Australian
just
friends.
Lost 2 listeners. Anyway.
And they're sitting at this table now.
But yeah, so that was quite interesting.
So just to interject here, Gerry, this is for you, right?
Oh.
If so Caroline just said that this space station was a test for the new space station that they're going to have, right? I'm assuming the Chinese are going to have like a name the space station competition.
Oh, can't wait for it.
Come on, what entry do you
Here we
think
go.
Gerry, what entry would you offer as the name for the new Chinese space station?
I'm going to steer away from Spacey McSpaceface.
Well, that's what we're all expecting.
How about Heavenly Palace McPalace face?
Yes.
Heavenly Palace face.
Anyway, I'm sure
Palace
they're not going to
McPalace
name
face.
it.
Palace McPalace face.
Okay.
2.0.
You can submit that to the Chinese Space Authority.
Nah, don't worry, they're already
and,
listening. Don't worry, they're already listening. They've got their things on the
Yeah,
internet.
we
don't
got
worry.
them on board a long time ago.
That's it.
When we
Yes.
started talking about Kuiper belts.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were.
they got us. They're already listing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, the Chinese space program is quite advanced and doing a lot of good things.
Yeah.
And they've actually got one of the largest dishes on Earth. It's a 500-meter diameter aperture, and mine's like 127-millimeter aperture. It's my telescope. So
I thought the largest dish in China was like a nasi goreng or something like that. But
that's not from China. That's not a Chinese dish.
isn't it?
No.
I feel so ignorant.
Malaysian.
Oh, it's Malaysian.
Yeah, get it right.
Okay, let me start that again. I thought the largest dish in China was like Peking duck or something.
Moving on.
Yum cha? Oh, now I feel hungry. Someone here's ordering dinner, aren't they? We got that sorted?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, another exciting thing that happened this week is that we've still got the Hubble telescope working hard up in space. They are still using it. It's one of my favorite telescopes. It sends back the most amazing images of galaxies, stars, and it does an amazing job of exploring our space around us.
Now, this was fascinating, this story. So,
Yeah.
hit us with this one.
This was really, really good. So they were looking at a cluster of galaxies. Now, this is not a
Far
cluster.
away. Sorry.
Far, far away.
Interestingly-
which were a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far
Come
away.
on, got to mention that.
Okay,
Yeah.
near a galaxy far,
Far.
far away. Okay, near a cluster of galaxies far, far
But
away.
certainly a long, long time ago.
Definitely a long, long time ago. Now, let me just say this. It wasn't... Now, imagine when we're thinking about clusters, it's always about clusters of stars, yeah? But this is a cluster of galaxies. Now, galaxies are groups of stars. And we are in a galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy. And
Really food theme tonight, aren't we? Milky Way galaxy.
yeah,
Sorry.
I'm getting hungry.
I think it's
Anyway,
100,
so
Anyone from Mars bar?
anyway, because let's keep serious. Because of these amazing clusters of galaxies that they were looking at, and its name, here's a really scientific name for it. It's called MACS, M-A-C-S, J1149 plus 2223.
Wow.
This cluster of galaxies.
They're not good with the names, are they?
No, but
Why don't they ask
just
Gerry?
hold on.
Gerry's
just
got a good name. Gerry can name it for them.
Anyway,
Cluster
now
McCluster face. You know?
let me get through this.
You're a galaxy, not a number.
So the cluster of galaxies, you can imagine, exert immense gravitational force, okay, on each other, because they're next to each other and they're pulling on each other, okay. Now, while looking at this cluster of galaxies, just as a routine study, they noticed something, a lone star. And it was they call it it's a very, very, well, actually, they called it an enormous blue star. And it's a single star on its own, not part of a galaxy or anything. But they managed to determine this star is the furthest star that they've ever seen, 9 billion light years away.
Wow.
Now, if you think about it, the universe we've estimated is about 13 billion light years old. So imagine this star is 9 billion. So it's really sort of at the beginning, not quite at the beginning, but near the beginning of our universe, the development of our universe. And they call it Icarus, by the way. So the way they managed to see it is that the gravitational forces of these galaxies actually formed a natural lens and magnified the light of this star, and they were able to see it.
That's amazing.
So it was just kind of by accident that they were able to see it. So, yeah, that was just something amazing that blew my mind when you start talking about billions of light years. So
just say, I was traveling, this is serious, I'm not joking.
Yeah,
if
no.
I was traveling at the speed of light, if I could, how long would it take me to get to this
9
star?
billion years.
I haven't got that much time.
No.
So what you're
And-
saying is I need an interphasic spore drive and I can get there instantly. Is that
Anyway, yes, something like that.
Star Trek Discovery people.
Yeah, that's
keep
it.
up, keep up.
Those spores. Anyway,
Spore drive.
Don't get me started.
They're real, yeah? Mycelia Network is-
Yeah, it was a good series, but the science is a bit off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you wanted to go back in time 9 billion years, well, that's how long it took for the light from that star to get here. Now, we're not sure if the star is still there because it's 9 billion years old. Stars can live for billions of years, but who knows? Who knows
It may
what's
not even
happened?
be there
Yeah,
anymore.
who knows if it looks like what it looks like now.
Yeah.
But that's just something quite amazing to ponder. And it just kind of blew my mind that they found something that old.
Yeah, and it's wonder like this that makes you think about your own existence and everything else, isn't it? That's the beauty of science, isn't it?
For me, it was the cluster of galaxies. What? They're looking at it and all those
and
forces.
that's bizarre.
I mean, we live in
about
one
galaxy,
galaxy
like clustered together
in a
That's-
little solar system, and
very small corner of the
Yeah.
of the galaxy that we're in God knows where in
like
the
on one of
universe.
the outer arms of the Milky Way.
So fascinating.
But yeah, so I mean, it was even cool that we had a clear sight from Earth straight down to this 9 billion year old star, past a few of these these galaxies.
That happens to be magnified by the
That
positioning
just
of other
happened.
stars.
I know, 9 billion light years away.
So what do they like? Is this star? What do they see? Are they just seeing raw data on a
They've
spreadsheet,
actually-
or
if
is
you
there a
go-
picture or an image? Or
Well, I can turn my iPad around. If you go to
Whoa.
the NASA website and have a look,
Yeah.
we can put a link up to this article.
Yep.
They have actual images
Goodness
of
me.
a little speck of star that they can see, and these clusters of galaxies that they were looking at.
That's nothing
So-
to blink at, is it?
No.
That's an amazing feat.
Yeah.
Has it got a name now? Is that the person who found it? They're going to name it after them, or
Well, Icarus.
Icarus. Oh, Icarus.
Yeah.
Is the person wasn't called Icarus though.
No.
No way.
That's what they've nicknamed it. I'm sure they've got a scientific name
Yeah.
for it because they're always numbers and letters, but there's so many of them, it's hard to name everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed at when I can look at the local stars with my telescope, let alone something that is 9 billion light years away. So yeah,
fascinating stuff,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's really cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that, Caroline. That's my mind blown for this episode. I think we're good to wrap it up now, aren't we? So if you'd like to get in touch with us, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/WTFaithNet. We're on Twitter at WhatTheFaithNet.
Yep. But I lost the password for Instagram, so sorry about that.
We're currently not on Instagram. Or we are, but
but I can't get to it.
We're not posting anything. But we're also on www.whatthefaith.net, where our past episodes can be found, and you can subscribe on iTunes as well. Just search for What the Faith on iTunes and look for all of the past goodness. Check some of our old Easter episodes out. I'm sure there's a few good ones there if you want some other reflections.
A few Easter eggs.
Very good. There's one with Gerry's tips on what to do with Easter eggs after Easter.
Oh, yeah.
Which was surprisingly short, but yeah, thanks for that one.
Eat them.
Eat them, basically, yeah. We wish everyone listening a happy, blessed, holy Easter. And a happy Easter season. Remember that Easter is not finished. It's a season now, and it goes on for a while, up until the Feast of Pentecost, where we celebrate Happy Birthday Church.
Yeah.
Caroline, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jared, thank you very much.
Pleasure to have been here.
Thank you for everyone who's listening. Until next time.